Hello students, I hope you all are doing good in tough time. Since you are the future of India, hence take care of your health, stay safe and stay healthy at your home. This is the first chapter naming Medieval Europe, Rise and Spread of Christianity. So in this chapter, we will come to know how Christianity is spreaded during medieval age in Europe. But before that, we need to know what is the meaning of medieval. Okay, so it means when you have to define medieval, then it is related to Middle Ages, which means resembling or linked to the Middle Ages being cruel, uncivilized or primitive. So that's how you define medieval period, and it is a period between ancient and modern era. Okay, see what it says. For convenience, history itself has been divided into three periods: the ancient period, the medieval period and modern period. As you know that history has been divided into three periods and it is given here. In India, the medieval period stretches roughly between 8th and the 18th century AD. It is further subdivided into early medieval period 8th to 13th century AD and the later medieval period 13th to 18th century AD. However, it must be clear that the medieval period in India does not correspond to the medieval period in other parts of the world. For example, the medieval periods in Europe stretches from about AD 500 to 1500. Now, I would explain this term. The early Middle Ages or early medieval period, it marked the start of the Middle Ages of European history, which lasted from the 6th to the 10th century CE. The early Middle Ages followed the decline of the Western Roman Empire and preceded the High Middle Ages, that was from 10th to 13th century. And early Middle Ages, largely it overlapped the late antiquity, and the term late antiquity was used by that time to emphasize elements of continuity with the Roman Empire, and early Middle Ages was used to emphasize development characteristics of the later medieval period. Okay, now it is important for you to know that the transition from the ancient period to the medieval period did not happen all of a sudden. It was the slow and gradual process which involved in a series of political, social, economic and religious changes that were quite different from those of ancient period. So what happened? The medieval period saw a continuation of trends which began during the classical antiquity, which included population decline, especially in urban centers. Urban centers means city areas, right? And decline of trade and increased immigration. Okay, and it was basically happening in cities. And the period by that time has been labeled as Dark Ages. So it was what happened? It was labeled as Dark Ages. Why? Because there was a scarcity of literacy and cultural output from the time, especially in northwestern Europe. Okay, so the Eastern Roman Empire or Byzantine Empire continued to survive by that time. In the 7th century, the Islamic Caliphate who conquered swaths of formerly Roman territory. Okay, so this is all about this. Now coming to social political circumstances. There were several changes in socio-political circumstances during the medieval period all over the world. Many large empires came into existence. Some of these empires were transcontinental in nature, and we have already read that Roman Empire have disintegrated by the 5th century AD. Okay, in Western Europe there were major socio-political, just a second, and economic development in the countryside. The empire of Charlemagne AD 742 till 814 was the best example in the Western and Central Europe at the beginning of the 9th century AD. He promoted arts and education, and his court was the culture center of the Carolingian Renaissance. Although the empire collapsed rapidly, yet its urban centers, trading networks persisted. Okay, so see what it says. By that time, many of those trends were reversed later in the period. In 1800, the title of emperor was revived in Western Europe by Charlemagne, whose Carolingian Empire greatly affected later Europe social structure and history. By that time, you know what happened? The European continent experienced a return to systematic agriculture in the form of the feudal system, which introduced such innovations as three-field planting and the heavy plough. Barbarian migration stabilized in much of Europe, although Northern Europe was greatly affected by the Viking expansions, right? Okay, so this is up to here. Now, from this line, you can understand the term feudalism. Okay, during this period, the system that developed in Western Europe was feudalism. It was marked by the agriculture production around castles and manor houses. Okay, here the feudal lords of the manor owned land that was cultivated by serfs, which is also known as peasants. Okay. Now, from the 12th century AD onwards, the influence of commerce towards the feudal order began to evolve, and the change was boosted by Mediterranean entrepreneurs in Venice and Genoa. Consequently, trade within Europe began to improve. By the end of the 15th century AD, the Spaniards and the Portuguese began to voyages of discovery and finally reached India. Okay, so in this it says that those were the traces and the beginning of medieval period in India. Okay, means like medieval India, it referred to the post-colonial era, means 8 to 18th century CE in the Indian subcontinent. And during that time, it was divided into two periods. The earlier medieval period, which lasted from the 8th to the 13th century, and the late medieval period, which lasted from the 13th to 18th century in the definition. Although many ends in the period with the start of the Mughal Empire in 1526. It lasted from 8th century AD to 18th century AD. Okay. Now, so it is up to here. In my next video, I will start from Roman conquest of Palestine. So this is all for today. Have a great day. Thank you.